April 6, 2017, 22-year-old Jacob Gray went missing while traveling on Unsolved Hot Springs Road in the Olympic National Park of Washington. His whereabouts remained unknown until August 10, 2018, when his body was discovered in Ho Lake, located within the Daniel J. Evans Wilderness area of the park. This was 15 miles away from his belongings and at an elevation of 5,300 feet. This is the story of Jacob Gray. Jacob Gray, a native of Santa Cruz, California, embarked on a solo bicycle trip from Port Townsend, Washington on April 5, 2017, hauling a fully loaded trailer of camping equipment. His ultimate destination was the Daniel J. Evans Wilderness in Olympic National Park, Washington, before continuing eastward. However, on April 6, Gray's bicycle, trailer, and most of his belongings were found approximately 6.5 miles up Unsolved Hot Springs Road, a picturesque route named after the Quileute Indian term for sparkling waters. An unusual discovery was made. A bow was lying on the ground, and arrows were embedded in the ground and protruding from the back of the trailer, but there was no sign of the owner of the bike and gear. Jacob Gray's bicycle had a unique backstory. It was a promotional bike won by his father, Randy, at a contractor's show. As the son of a house builder, Gray was skilled with a skill saw, and he constructed a plywood rack behind the seat, which he secured 2 milk crates to, side by side. The bike's flat rat trap pedals were suitable for his running shoes or hiking boots, and while it wasn't built for speed or aesthetics, it was practical and efficient, much like a pickup truck. When it came to camping gear, Gray had a preferred shopping destination, the Goodwill store in Port Townsend, Washington. There, he gathered items for his journey, including wool blankets, pots and pans, a toolbox, a stove, a deck of cards, a Holman Bible, a tent, fuel bottles, a case of Mountain House dehydrated meals, 2 first aid kits, carabiners, climbing crampons, a bow and quiver of arrows, a rain poncho, a sleeping bag, tarps, rope, and bungee cords.
Whenever you're in a wilderness situation, particularly one that's high altitude and remote, there's several things you have to contend with if you're trying to survive. You've got the temperature, you have potential wildlife and terrain-related injuries, you have the need for water, the need for food, and any of these things can become a major problem and potentially kill you if you're not ready for them and if you don't know how to deal with them.
Despite the harsh weather conditions that characterized northwestern Washington in the early days of April, Jacob, a skilled surfer who had grown up on the beach, remained undeterred. He had a deep connection with the water, which energized him in all its forms, whether he was surfing on it or simply riding in it. According to his father, Randy, Jacob's love for the water had been cultivated from a young age, and it was evident in the way he fearlessly rode the waves, regardless of the weather conditions. Despite the challenges posed by the harsh weather, Jacob's enthusiasm for his trip remained unwavering. Jacob's father said,
"Even if we don't go surfing, we'll get a coffee and go down to the beach and watch the sunrise. That sort of thing."
There were a few reported sightings of Jacob, but they were not very helpful in locating him. However, some of the sightings seemed credible. For instance, a man claimed to have seen Jacob twice in Indian Valley and along Crescent Lake on April 5. The next day, a woman reported seeing a man towing a red trailer climbing Fairholme Hill at 1 o'clock in the morning. Later that same morning, another woman passed Jacob as he was riding up the Unsolved Hot Springs Road, which was about 2 miles from the 101. Later that afternoon, the same woman noticed Jacob's rig on the side of the road, which was 6.5 miles upriver from the 101. She was curious enough to snap a quick photo of the abandoned contraption, which was a flash of red and yellow against the green of the forest. However, it wasn't a good place to camp or stash a bike for long, as it was highly visible, not 10 yards from the road, and only 20 yards from the river. Despite these sightings, Jacob's whereabouts remained unknown. A ranger had recalled seeing the bike and gear, but didn't think much of it, assuming that the rider was on a short excursion on foot. This wasn't uncommon in the area since touring cyclists were a common sight, and Jacob was the first of many to come. However, it was evident that someone, possibly Jacob, had been organizing gear as there was a poly tarp spread out, surrounded by camping equipment. However, what caught the ranger's attention were the 4 arrows stuck in the ground in an east-west line near the tarp. While going missing isn't a crime or an emergency for individuals over 18, a person isn't considered missing until someone reports them as such. In this case, nobody had reported Jacob missing at all. It was rare for a cyclist to vanish, unlike hikers and runners. However, The fact that the bike remained untouched for most of the day piqued the Rangers' curiosity. On the afternoon of April 6, Ranger John Bowie searched the area around the bike, hoping to find any clues. He wondered if the cyclist had gone to the river to filter some water or hitchhiked to the hot springs. But if he had slipped and fallen into the sub-40-degree water, he would have sure succumbed. The following is the actual missing persons dispatch call to park rangers.
Dispatch, 741 Ron on North Point.
741 Ron.
I've got a bicycle that has went off the Salt Duck Road about mile marker 7, and I can't find anybody around it. You might want to send a ranger up here so we can see what's going on.
Copy, thanks for the info. 1630.
741 Ron, 611. 741 Ron, Detective Lee, on North Point. I'll head that way. Is that bicycle down the bank a ways, or is it easy to get to? It's easy to get to. It's got a little carrier on the back of it, too. It looked like it crashed off the road. Okay, so it didn't look like maybe somebody hit it there so they can go off for a hike. It doesn't look like anybody's hit it. It looks like he just went off the road. I'm going to stay here until you get up this way. Okay, I'll be coming over from the yellow. 741 Ron.
When Ranger Bowie stumbled upon the bike and trailer, his heart sank as he feared the worst. However, to his relief, they were in excellent condition, fully operational with no signs of damage or malfunction. The trailer was loaded with a ton of equipment, which indicated that the owner had come fully prepared for his adventure. Despite the reassuring state of the bike and trailer, the Rangers couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling that something wasn't right. Their worst fears were confirmed when they scoured the Salt Duck Hot Springs resort, and no one had seen the owner. They suspected that he may have fallen into the river, but they had to keep searching to be sure. On that fateful Friday, Ranger Ray stumbled upon Jacob's wallet, ID, and a list of phone numbers. It confirmed the owner's identity but also heightened their concerns for his safety. Ray immediately contacted Jacob's sister, Mallory, and upon hearing the news she implored Ray to call their parents in Santa Cruz right away, hoping they could help in the search and bring Jacob home safely.
The case of Jacob Gray is interesting because we have someone who is very young, in his early 20s, and who had, by all accounts, a lot of experience with dealing with camping, even camping solo, and had a lot of equipment. He had a whole bicycle cart full of the type of gear that you would need to survive in just that type of environment. And that leads to the question, why didn't he survive? When he was discovered something around 15 miles from his main campsite where he had left most of his gear, he still had some of his gear on him. 15 miles is a long way, but it's not an unreasonable amount of distance for someone to cover in their early 20s who's experienced outdoorsman, but it does make you wonder why he was so far away from the area that he had stashed most of his gear.
After finding Jacob's abandoned bike and trailer, the Rangers scoured the surrounding area for any signs of evidence. They kicked through the dense ferns and combed the river banks, searching for anything that might indicate what had happened to the missing cyclist. Despite their efforts, the Rangers had very little to go on, other than the functioning bike and trailer. The equipment appeared to be in excellent condition, with no signs of damage or malfeasance. The tires were inflated, and there was no indication that Jacob had been hit by a vehicle. However, all signs seemed to point to the river as the likely location of Jacob's disappearance. The Olympic National Park Rangers concluded that he may have slipped and fallen into the water while trying to filter it into his camel bach. They planned to search the river more thoroughly when the water levels went down in the summer. Jacob's mother, Laura, had spoken to him just a few nights before he set out on his journey. She knew that he was excited to embark on a cross-country tour to visit his brother in Vermont. Jacob had even mentioned that he might take 2 years to complete the trip, working odd jobs and seasonal work along the way. When Jacob's mother, Laura, reached out to the Rangers for help, they explained that their park was extremely understaffed and overburdened. The park covered an area that was 200,000 acres larger than Yosemite and received almost 4 million visitors each year. Unfortunately, Due to budget cuts in 2013, nearly two-thirds of their law enforcement personnel had been transferred to other parks and not replaced. To compound their already overloaded situation, within a week of Jacob's bike being found, there were two other incidents in the park, a plane crash and another missing person. The rangers were stretched thin and simply didn't have the resources or personnel to conduct a full-scale search for Jacob. It was a heartbreaking situation for Laura and Jacob's loved ones, who were left feeling helpless and frustrated by the lack of support from the park authorities. Randy, Jacob's father, dropped his hammer gun and threw his wetsuit into his truck. Rangers told him the bike was found near the river and Randy had a sense he'd be searching swift water. He picked up Mallory and sped north, driving the 1,000 miles from Santa Cruz straight through.
I drove all night. I got stopped going 100 miles an hour in Oregon. I told him what was going on. He said, "I'm not the last cop to not give you a ticket. Just be careful."
When Randy and Mallory arrived at the park, 5 days had already passed since the rangers first discovered Jacob's abandoned bike. Other family members and friends, including Jacob's mother Laura, flew into SeaTac and drove to the park for what ended up being a tragic search and rescue mission. The family was surprised to learn that no ranger-assisted search had been launched yet. Unfortunately, national parks operate like sovereign countries, and search and rescue personnel from outside the park must be requested by park officials in order to initiate a search. Jacob's bike was discovered just 40 feet away from the river, which was 40 feet wide at the high water mark. On the other side of the river is the Olympic National Forest, which is under a different jurisdiction. Unlike national parks, national forests operate under the county model, and the Clallam County Sheriff's Department is responsible for search and rescue there, which is only a stone's throw away from the park. Randy and Danny suited up and entered the river, but they sensed lethargy from park officials and decided to take matters into their own hands. The family demanded an intense search, and Ranger Ray agreed to their request. Randy searched behind waterfalls, in deep holes, and under log jams while Mallory kicked through ferns, looking for any evidence. The family was surprised to find that the park had not requested any outside assistance, such as dog teams or aircraft from Whidbey Island Naval Air Station. Randy bushwhacked through thick brush and thorny Devil's Club in the rain, suffering from trench foot due to wet socks. Despite his physical discomfort, he remained determined to find his son alive. Surprisingly, the Coast Guard, based in Port Angeles, was not requested for assistance, nor were the aircraft from Whidbey Island Naval Air Station, which have been known to assist with some Olympic National Park searches. Time is of the essence in search and rescue operations, and the delay of 5 days and the lack of assistance from neighboring agencies greatly reduced the chances of finding Jacob alive. It was a devastating realization for the family, who were left feeling let down by the system and desperate for answers. Randy and Mallory arrived at the Olympic National Park on Tuesday, April 11th, 5 days after the rangers discovered Jacob's bike. Laura, Jacob's mother, and Danny Campbell, Jacob's cousin, met them at the park. Despite the family's eagerness to initiate a search with dog teams, the park declined their offer and instead opted to keep the search in-house. After the discovery of a bike on April 6, 2017, the Clallam County Sheriff's Office conducted a search the following day with the help of approximately 30 people and dogs, but their efforts were fruitless. Olympic Mountain Rescue was called in nearly a week later on April 12 and during their search, they found evidence suggesting that someone had exchanged hiking boots for running shoes, walked towards the river, and slipped and fallen into it, leaving a mark on a mossy rock. Further downstream, there were signs that the individual may have attempted to climb out. However, a state fisheries biologist was assigned to look through the log jams in the river instead of swift water rescue divers. On April 13, the search for the individual became a search for a body instead of a live cyclist, and dog teams were brought in. 2 cadaver dogs indicated a log jam where a corpse might be trapped, but after searching all log jams for 12 miles on either side of the bike area, no body was found. The search operation continued in Olympic National Park throughout the week, but on April 14, the park transitioned into a limited continuous search, effectively ending the search by Olympic Rangers.
Did he become lost? Just got confused? Maybe despite being an avid outdoorsman, didn't have a lot of experience doing navigation, particularly in maybe inclement conditions or bad weather that are really common in the Pacific Northwest? Was he out there on purpose to commit suicide and no one knows about it? The fact that his body wasn't discovered until like a year later made it really hard, basically impossible, to determine exactly what happened and what was the cause of death.
After a period of over a year, specifically on the late afternoon of Friday, August 10, 2018, a group of biologists embarked on a trip into the mountains to study marmots. During their expedition, they stumbled upon the remains, clothing, and gear. The discovery was made at the top of a ridge located above Ho Lake, approximately 5,300 feet above sea level, and at a distance of at least 15 miles from where he abandoned his bicycle. The location where Jacob's remains were discovered was not near any trail, and during the time of his disappearance, which was in April, the terrain would have been covered in snow and potentially prone to avalanches. The remains were found on a treeless ridge, which could have been visible from the air.
Was it foul play? Or was there something even weirder that happened out there in the middle of the woods? It's always possible there was something natural, either a wild animal, or maybe he ate something that was poisonous, similar to what happened to Chris McCandless. So some of my questions are, if he did want to die, why isn't it more obvious what happened? And if he didn't, he seemingly had all the resources at his disposal to at least put up a good fight. He had a lighter on his body. It doesn't appear that he had made any fire or anything near to where his body was found. So there's lots of weird things that could have happened. Maybe there's another person that he met out there, someone who he knew before, maybe a stranger. Maybe it was someone who convinced him to go off the path that he was comfortable with, either accidentally or on purpose. Maybe they became separated, or maybe this person took him out into the woods on purpose and it was some kind of murder. While we'll almost certainly never know exactly what happened, we do know that a lot of things can go wrong when you're out in the woods, especially alone. So it's always good to make sure you're mentally, physically, and gear-wise prepared to be in a potential wilderness survival situation. And that's especially true if you're in a more remote, high-altitude location, like in this case. And it's usually a good idea to have a general plan ahead of time about where you're going to be and let someone else know about it. That way, if you don't get back in time, they have a specific place to look.
The story of Jacob Gray can serve as a cautionary tale for other hikers and can help them be more aware and prepared for the potential dangers of hiking in the wilderness. It highlights the importance of being prepared. Jacob Gray was an experienced hiker, but even he faced unexpected circumstances that led to his disappearance. This serves as a reminder that no matter how experienced a hiker is, it's essential to be well prepared for any situation. It emphasizes the importance of safety precautions. Gray's backpack was found on a trail near the summit of Mount Eleanor, indicating that he may have strayed from the marked trail. This underscores the importance of sticking to marked trails and avoiding shortcuts or unmarked paths. It encourages hikers to be more cautious. Hiking in the wilderness can be a wonderful experience, but it's important to remember that it can also be dangerous. The story of Jacob Gray can encourage hikers to be more cautious and aware of their surroundings while on the trail. It reinforces the need for communication. Gray's family reported him missing when he did not return from his hike. This highlights the importance of letting someone know your plans before heading out on a hike and staying in communication with others while on the trail. In summary, the story of Jacob Gray can help other hikers by reminding them of the importance of being prepared, taking safety precautions, being cautious, and communicating their plans with others. By taking these steps, hikers can minimize the risks and enjoy a safer and more enjoyable hiking experience in the wilderness.